Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, make sure to smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit subscribe so you don't miss more tales where humanity surprises the entire galaxy. Now let's begin. The chamber of the Galactic Council thrummed with unease. Light from 1,000 suspended crystals cast the amphitheater into a shifting wash of violet and silver. Delegates from across the spiral arm sat in tiered seats, some bristling with armored carapaces, others cloaked in shimmering membranes, and still more encased in mechanical exosuits that hissed with compressed gas. At the center hovered the projection, an enormous beast stalking through the forests of Earth 7. It was the Predator. Its outline dwarfed the trunks of ironwood trees, fur rippling with each movement, eyes glowing like twin embers. Even in the recording, its presence was unsettling, calm, deliberate, carrying the certainty of a creature that knew it was at the top of the chain. The delegates muttered in overlapping tongues, a chorus of fear disguised as analysis. One slammed a claw against the railing. "You see? It hunts without limit." Colonists reported entire herds culled in a single night. Another delegate, thin and skeletal, pressed a webbed hand to its translator node. "This cannot be allowed to spread beyond Earth 7. A predator of that scale, if it adapts, could topple ecosystems on our worlds. It must be eliminated." The word hung in the air, eliminated. Few species dared say it outright, yet all of them feared the alternative. From the dais, Counselor Tren, a reptilian elder draped in ceremonial chains, raised his voice. "The hunters will be sent. Warriors from the fiercest bloodlines, each sworn to return with its head. If we delay, colonization will stall. If we hesitate, it may vanish into the void beyond our reach." A ripple of assent spread through the chamber. The decree was sealed. They assembled the hunters quickly. Names whispered in awe by lesser soldiers. Karan of the Vrak, whose talons had ended the sand leviathans of Zirin. Yalith of the Run, lightning fast, who had brought down a sky scourge with nothing but twin blades. And more, each a legend, each proud of a record unmarred by failure. In their warships they reviewed the footage again, studying the Predator's every movement. They argued over strategy, boasting of which technique would bring the beast down quickest. Not one of them considered the possibility of defeat. To them humans were a footnote. Scouts, technicians, colonists, useful perhaps in barren worlds, but insignificant in the theater of predators and warriors. When a report noted the presence of a single human scout still operating on Earth 7, the hunters scoffed. "Irrelevant," Karan rumbled. "If he crosses our path, he'll be told to clear the field. The hunt is ours." That scout's name was Lieutenant Jack Rourke. He was not present in their war room, not summoned to defend himself before the council. He was, as usual, deep in the wilderness. A man with weathered features, carrying the casual ease of someone who had long since accepted solitude as a companion. His uniform was standard issue, though sun-faded and patched in places. A blade hung from his belt, not for ceremony but for work, clearing brush, skinning prey, cutting rope. His eyes were sharp, the kind that measured distances by instinct and listened to the silence between sounds. The council had never heard of him. The hunters had dismissed him. Yet his path and the predators were already crossing in ways no alien had predicted. On the day of the decree, as the council recessed into silence, Jack was crouched by a river on Earth 7, filling a canteen. The forest stretched endlessly around him, trees thick as fortress walls, their canopies laced with bioluminescent spores that winked like stars. His log recorder blinked with a steady pulse, mapping terrain for colonists who might never come. He had seen traces of the predator. Giant paw prints in the mud, the twisted carcass of something reptilian left half-eaten, claw marks along a boulder that looked like gouges from steel blades. He should have been terrified, perhaps. But he wasn't. He'd been stationed on worse worlds, stalked by worse shapes in the dark. Survival was a matter of rhythm. Keep moving, keep alert, respect the land. Still, something about these signs unnerved him, not the violence of them but the deliberation. Whatever left them wasn't killing out of hunger alone. It was sending a message: this is my ground. That night, as the hunter's ship streaked through the void, Jack lit a small fire beneath a natural stone overhang. Sparks drifted upward into the canopy, joining the forest's glow. He ate rations quietly, listening to the symphony of distant howls. One sounded closer than the rest. He glanced into the darkness, hand resting on his blade. The sound wasn't random. It was watching. Far above, the hunters made their final preparations. Their vessels pierced atmosphere, cloaked to avoid detection. They would land in the dense valleys where the predator had last been seen, fan out, drive it toward the kill zone. None of them entertained doubt. Counselor Tren received their final transmission and exhaled with satisfaction. By dawn, the galaxy will rest easier. The chamber emptied, the great projection dimmed. But the echo of the beast's eyes lingered in every delegate's memory. Molten gold. Watching. Waiting. And on Earth, 7, under the flickering canopy, Lieutenant Jack Rourke shifted in his sleep, unaware that within hours, alien hunters would scour the forest for a creature that had already found him. The hunt was coming. The galaxy had chosen its champions. But it had overlooked the one figure who mattered most. The human scout. The man who would soon be discovered lying beside the deadliest predator alive. The hunters descended through the thick clouds of Earth, 7 in silence, their ships cutting through the atmosphere like falling blades. The forest canopy below stretched unbroken for hundreds of kilometers, a sea of green woven with faintly glowing spores that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's cycle. From orbit it looked serene. Up close it was anything but. The first landing sent tremors across the valley. Creatures scattered, trees shook loose their luminescent pollen, and the silence afterward was the kind that made even veteran warriors uneasy. The hunters spread into formation, each armored figure moving with practiced stealth, sensors sweeping for signs of the predator. They had studied its patterns, its kills, the way it vanished between sightings. They expected resistance, but they did not expect what the forest whispered about this creature. Intelligence that bordered on strategy. Karan of the Vrak was the first to notice the claw marks along a tree trunk, gouges that ran higher than his shoulders. He ran a talon across the grooves, tasting the faint residue. Fresh, he growled to his companions. It passed here within hours. His voice carried certainty, yet beneath it was the faint thrill of danger. The hunters pressed deeper, their path lit only by the faint glow of spores and their own infrared displays. A carcass appeared on their scanners ahead, massive, reptilian, torn open as though by storm winds. When they reached it, they saw the precision of the kill. A single devastating strike, organs devoured, bones left intact. One hunter clicked his mandibles uneasily. It feeds selectively. Chooses the richest parts. Waste is not its way. They pushed on, unaware that miles away, a different encounter was unfolding. Lieutenant Jack Rourke moved cautiously through the underbrush, rifle slung across his back, machete in hand. He followed the trail not by technology but by instinct. The bent grass, the faint metallic tang of blood, the silence where birds should have been calling. He found the beast when he wasn't looking for it. At first, it seemed like a shadow piled against the roots of an enormous tree. Then it breathed, chest rising and falling in ragged rhythm, and Jack's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade. He could have fled. Any manual would have told him to. Instead, he stood frozen, watching the creature that the council feared above all else. It was magnificent. Fur dark and bristling, streaked with blood from deep gashes along its flank. Muscles coiled beneath its hide, each movement deliberate even in weakness. Its eyes flickered open, molten gold locking on his. Jack expected the instant lunge, the tearing of flesh. Instead, the beast exhaled, low and rumbling, and let its head drop back onto the ground. Caution battled instinct. He could leave it to bleed out. But he knew predators of this caliber did not die quietly. If it recovered without aid, it might grow even more dangerous. Yet something in its eyes had given him pause, not the hunger of a killer, but a flicker of calculation, as though it weighed him and decided he wasn't prey. Jack crouched slowly, pulling his pack open. He lit a small fire, not for warmth but for smoke to keep other creatures at bay. The predator watched every motion. He tore strips from his spare shirt, dipped them in water, and without breaking eye contact pressed them against the wound. The beast growled, the sound vibrating through the earth, but it did not strike. The night passed in fragments of unease and fragile trust. Jack kept the fire alive, fed the beast scraps of dried rations, and spoke softly though he knew it could not understand. "You've had a rougher night than me, friend," he murmured. "But if you're going to make it, you'll need help." By dawn, the predator had not left. Instead, it shifted closer to the fire, curling its body so that the heat touched its wounds. Jack, exhausted, leaned against a stone, rifle within reach. When his eyes finally closed, the predator's head rested near his boots. Elsewhere, the hunters were closing in. Their scanners detected unusual heat signatures. Small fires in the valley, human tools discarded, the faint echo of a voice. They exchanged puzzled looks. No other humans were listed as present, and the trail suggested the predator's territory overlapped with this anomaly. Karan hissed. "The human scout interferes. He will compromise the hunt." But when they traced the tracks, they found confusion in the pattern. Predator and human footprints overlapped, not in violence but in parallel. Fires burned without signs of attack. The beast's kills seemed fewer than predicted. Yalith of the Rune tapped her blade against her palm, unsettled. Something has changed its rhythm. They pressed forward, determined to corner the predator before it adapted further. That evening, Jack awoke to the sound of low chuffing. The predator was standing now, limping but steady. It circled the camp slowly as though testing its strength, then stopped to stare directly at him. He held its gaze, heart pounding, until it lowered its head in something that felt alarmingly close to acknowledgement. "You're still here?" Jack said, his voice quiet. He reached into his pack, pulled another ration bar and tossed it near the creature's paws. The predator sniffed, then consumed it with a single bite. Its molten eyes never left his. In that exchange, an unspoken pact was made. Far above the canopy, hunters closed in on their prey, convinced they were stalking a beast that remained untamed. In the valley below, Jack Rourke and the predator sat by the same fire, two silhouettes against the alien night, bound by something no council record could have predicted. The hunters would soon learn the truth. But not yet. Tonight, the forest belonged to the strangest alliance imaginable. A solitary human and the galaxy's deadliest predator, neither willing to leave the other's side. And when dawn came, they would face the first test of their fragile bond. The forest awoke with the cries of unseen creatures, their calls echoing between trunks that stretched higher than towers. Mist clung to the undergrowth, curling around Lieutenant Jack Rourke as he packed away the remnants of his camp. The predator paced nearby, limping less with each step, its eyes glinting in the dim light. Jack felt its presence like a shadow stitched to his own movements. He should have been unsettled, yet each hour spent near the beast dulled the sharp edge of fear. He moved carefully, marking coordinates into his recorder, speaking notes aloud for habit. Valley floor shows stable soil composition, suitable for outpost structures. His voice was steady, though he could not help noticing the way the predator tilted its head as if listening. When he stopped, it stopped. When he crouched to examine a plant, it lowered its bulk into the brush, watching. The pattern unsettled him more than the creature's teeth ever had. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. The hunters were not far behind. Their boots sank into the loam as they tracked signs through the valley. Karan crouched to examine a print as wide as his chest. The beast is injured but not weak. It remains dangerous. Yalitha's blades caught the mist as she twirled them absently, restless for the clash she craved. Their scanners picked up faint traces of human equipment. Wrappers, scraps of cloth, ash from a controlled fire. They paused at the edge of a clearing. One hunter raised a claw toward the patterns in the soil. Predator prints interwoven with human footprints, not in chaos but in sequence. Karan's eyes narrowed. The human travels with it. The idea spread through the group with disbelief and derision. Impossible, Yalith scoffed. No creature of that caliber would suffer a frail species beside it. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The footprints did not tell of a chase or battle. They told of a partnership. Jack felt it too. He had stopped thinking of the beast as an animal to be avoided. He had begun to trust it, though the thought was absurd. When a scaled predator burst from the brush, fangs flashing, it was not Jack's blade that saved him but the beast's fury. With a roar that shook the ground, it struck, crushing the smaller creature with a single swipe. Jack raised his weapon, ready to finish the job, but the predator stepped between him and the fallen prey, golden eyes burning, and lowered its head. Jack understood. This was protection, not rivalry. He lowered his weapon and stepped back. The predator remained by his side, watching until the threat was still. For the first time he felt less like a lone scout and more like a man with a guardian. The hunters closed in that night. From a ridge above the valley they saw firelight flickering below, a human silhouette framed against the glow. At his back, the beast lay stretched like a mountain of fur and muscle, its head resting near his boots. The hunters did not attack at once. They observed, unsettled by the quiet between man and monster. The predator's ears twitched at every sound, but it did not strike. The human reached into the fire, broke his rations and shared. Whispers spread through the hunters' ranks. Karan's jaw clenched. The human has compromised the hunt. He has tamed it or it manipulates him. Either way, both must be dealt with. At dawn they struck. The forest erupted in snarls, weapons fire, and the hiss of energy blades. Jack was thrown from his bedroll, instincts snapping into place as he grabbed his rifle. The predator surged forward, intercepting the first wave with a roar that shattered the air. One hunter was slammed into a tree so hard the trunk split. Another barely parried a swipe that could have gutted him. Jack fired warning shots, not at the hunters but above their heads. "Stop," he shouted, voice raw. "You don't understand." His words were lost in the clash. The predator fought with savage precision, but Jack saw restraint in every blow. It wounded, toppled, incapacitated, but it did not kill. Even in fury, it spared its enemies, something Jack could not ignore. The hunters, however, mistook mercy for weakness. Karan lunged with talons bared, slashing across the predator's flank. Jack moved without thinking, hurling a stone that cracked against the alien's armored skull. Karan stumbled, stunned by the audacity of a human strike. "You side with it?" he snarled. "I side with survival." Jack's voice cut through the chaos. His chest heaved with adrenaline, but his stance did not falter. The predator circled back to his side, snarling, muscles rippling with tension. The hunters regrouped, eyes darting between man and monster, unable to reconcile the alliance before them. The clearing fell silent, save for the predator's low growl. Jack kept his rifle lowered but ready. The hunters held their weapons, but hesitation had slipped into their stances. What they had witnessed defied every story told of the beast. It was not domination that bound human and predator, it was choice. Yalith broke the silence first. Her voice was taut, uncertain. "If this is true, then we are not hunting a beast. We are hunting a bond." The words hung like mist in the clearing. Even Karan could not deny the evidence of his eyes. The predator stood shoulder to shoulder with the human, watching them not as prey but as adversaries. And the human stood unflinching, unwilling to yield or abandon the creature at his side. The hunters withdrew slowly, fading into the forest shadows, though not in defeat. Their whispers promised return, their gazes burned with suspicion. The hunt was no longer simple. It had become something the council had not foreseen. A test of loyalty between species, a question of where strength truly lay. As the forest reclaimed its silence, Jack placed a steady hand against the predator's fur. The creature did not flinch. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, a gesture that felt dangerously close to trust. Jack exhaled, tension draining from his body. "Looks like we've got more than the forest to survive now," he murmured. The predator blinked, molten eyes steady, and lay down beside him once more. Above them, unseen, the hunters recalibrated their plans, each step drawing the inevitable closer. The fragile bond had been tested, but the true reckoning was yet to come. The hunters regrouped under the pale canopy, their armor dulled by dust and blood. None spoke of the hesitation they had felt in the clearing, yet each carried it in the silence between words. They had not been driven back by strength alone, but by something far more unsettling, the human's defiance and the predator's refusal to kill. To warriors bred on certainty, doubt was poison. Karan stared into the darkness, claws flexing. "This cannot stand. The beast chooses restraint not because it is merciful but because it plots. The human is a tool. We end them both and the council will thank us." His voice carried confidence, though his eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of unease. Yalith, wiping blood from her blade, shook her head. "It could have torn us apart." "It did not. Even you felt it." Something binds them. She did not say aloud what they all feared, that the bond meant the creature was not a monster at all, but something more dangerous, capable of choosing loyalty. The decision was made to continue the hunt, but not in haste. Surveillance drones were deployed, broadcasting live to the council. Every movement would be recorded, every discovery judged. They would provide proof that this was no alliance but an aberration to be corrected. Jack Rourke felt none of this as he moved through the valley with the predator at his side. His focus was survival, keeping ahead of the hunters, feeding the wounded beast, and finding terrain that offered cover. Yet in quiet moments he found himself studying the creature with a growing sense of awe. It matched his pace without command, circled when he paused, and even mirrored his posture when he crouched low to examine tracks. The bond was no illusion. It was real, though he could not explain it. At dusk, he made camp in a hollow where roots twisted into natural walls. He tended the fire, tore strips of cloth to rebind the predator's flank, and whispered words he didn't expect it to understand. "You're stubborn. But then again, so am I." The beast rumbled softly, a sound too steady to be threat. Jack almost laughed at the absurdity, a man and a monster sharing silence like comrades. The hunters found them before dawn. From the ridge above, they saw the firelight flickering against the roots, saw the human stretched on his bedroll, hand resting against the predator's fur as though it were nothing more than a loyal hound. The image froze them in place. Even Karan, blade poised, faltered. Drones captured every detail, streaming the vision directly to the council chamber across light years. Delegates leaned forward in disbelief as the feared predator lay curled beside a man, breathing in rhythm, protective even in sleep. The silence in the chamber was thick enough to choke. Counselor Tren rose from his seat, scales rippling. "Impossible," he hissed. Yet the image offered no refuge of denial. The human shifted, murmured something inaudible, and the predator's ear twitched as though it understood. In the forest, the hunters debated. Some urged immediate attack to prove the bond false. Others hesitated, unwilling to disturb what they were witnessing. Yalith whispered, "If we strike now, the council will see only our fear. If we wait, they will see the truth." The truth arrived when Jack stirred. His eyes opened, weary but alert, and landed on the ring of hunters surrounding the hollow. He did not flinch. Instead, he rose slowly, placing himself between the intruders and the beast. The predator rumbled awake, rising to its feet with fluid menace, fangs bared, body coiled around the human like a wall of muscle and fury. Jack's voice carried across the clearing, steady despite the tension pressing on his lungs. "You came for him. But you'll have to get through me." The hunters bristled. They had faced titans, leviathans, horrors from forgotten stars, but never a man who stood unarmed against them, shielded only by trust in a monster. For a long moment no one moved. The predator's growl filled the silence, low and endless, vibrating through the roots. From orbit, the council watched the standoff unfold. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some demanded the human's execution for consorting with the beast. Others, quieter but sharper, wondered aloud what it meant for a predator to choose companionship with a species dismissed as fragile. Karan finally broke the paralysis. He stepped forward, claws glinting. "Stand aside, human. You are nothing but prey dressed in defiance." Jack tightened his jaw. "Then maybe it's time prey learned to fight back." The predator pressed closer to his side, golden eyes blazing. For the first time, Jack felt the weight of history pressing down on him, not just his own survival but something larger, something that might change how the galaxy saw humanity. He did not know if the council watched. He did not care. What mattered was the bond forged in fire and blood, undeniable in its truth. The hunters drew weapons, their formation closing like jaws. Jack's heart hammered, but he refused to step aside. He raised his rifle, not toward the beast, not toward the forest, but toward the hunters themselves. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. The council leaned forward, breath held across light years. The forest held its breath too, the mist curling in stillness, the spores dimming as though the world itself watched. Then the predator lowered its head until its snout brushed Jack's shoulder, a gesture so intimate and deliberate that even the fiercest hunters faltered. No one could deny what they were seeing. Not control, not manipulation, but trust. Jack's voice broke the silence. "This isn't your hunt anymore. It's ours." The words struck deeper than any blade. The hunters stepped back, uncertain, their formation unraveling in the face of a truth that defied every story told of monsters and men. High above, the council chamber was filled with uproar. Some screamed for annihilation, others for study, and a few dared whisper of alliance. But none could unsee the image: a human scout and the deadliest predator alive, standing side by side against the galaxy's finest hunters. The balance had shifted. And in that shift lay the seed of something greater than fear, something the council had not prepared for. The night closed around the hollow once more, but the silence carried promise of reckoning yet to come. The storm raged overhead, the fractured moon casting shards of pale light through torn clouds as Kale crouched on the ridgeline. His breath came steady despite the ache in his body, his rifle slung across his back and his eyes locked on the clearing below. The hunters had gathered there, a circle of alien steel and snarling voices, their formation broken by the sight they could not reconcile. The predator they had chased across worlds was curled in the dirt, its massive frame pressed protectively against the side of a lone human scout. Eric's lay beside him still, his hand resting on the predator's thick hide as if it were nothing more than a trusted hound. The beast's chest rose and fell with deep, rumbling breaths, its razor fangs glinting in the moonlight each time it exhaled. Every hunter's weapon trembled with hesitation. Kale rose from his crouch, boots crunching gravel as he strode down the slope. The hunters turned toward him, and though they outnumbered him and had trained all their lives to bring down apex threats, not one moved. His voice carried through the clearing like steel cutting glass. "You came for a monster," Kale said, gesturing to the predator with a sweep of his hand. "But what you found is something greater. Something you do not understand." One of the hunters, clad in crimson plating and rank bands across his helm, stepped forward. His mandibles clicked, his tone cold. "That creature is classified as extinction level. It is our duty to eliminate it. Step aside, human." The predator stirred at the raised voice, its luminous eyes flicking open, not with hostility but with measured awareness. Eric shifted slightly against its side, patting the beast's shoulder as though calming a restless steed. Kale caught the subtle movement, the quiet affirmation of a bond stronger than any code or treaty. "You'll try," Kale said softly, "and you'll fail. Because that predator has chosen. And it chose him." The words rippled through the circle. Some hunters lowered their weapons, others gripped them tighter, torn between instinct and the undeniable image before them. The predator, untamed, lethal, feared across the spiral arms, did not bare its fangs, did not lunge. It simply stayed at Eric's side, watching. One hunter barked a command and raised his cannon. The moment the barrel lit, Kale was moving. His rifle whipped down from his back, muzzle flash ripping open the night. The shot cracked against the alien's weapon, shattering it in his hands. Sparks hissed in the dirt. The predator rose with a deep growl, every hunter freezing as the forest itself seemed to hush in response. Eric stood now too, his expression not of fear but calm defiance. "It doesn't want war," he said, his voice low but resonant. "It only wanted to survive. Like us." He reached up, resting his hand against the predator's jaw, and the creature leaned into the touch with a rumble that reverberated in every chest. "We hunted it. We cornered it. And still, it did not kill me when it had the chance. Tell me then, which one of us is truly the monster?" Silence settled. The hunter's leader staggered back a step, as if the words had pierced something deeper than armor. The predator loomed, muscles coiled, but its gaze was steady on the circle of soldiers. Kale took the moment to drive it home. "Your council thinks power comes from fear. But here it is, your most dreaded weapon, resting at the side of a man it could tear apart in an instant. Power isn't fear. It's trust. And tonight, trust won." A sound rose then, strange and guttural, from within the hunter's ranks. Not a war cry but a sound of uncertainty, of shifting belief. The predator's growl deepened once more and one by one weapons lowered. The commander, his mandibles trembling, finally raised a clawed hand. "We withdraw. But understand this, human. The council will not accept what it cannot control. This bond you flaunt, it makes you both enemies now." Kale smiled grimly. then they'll have to catch us. The hunters retreated into the trees, shadows swallowed by stormlight until only the scout, the soldier, and the predator remained in the clearing. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy with ozone and promise. Eric's let out a breath he'd been holding, his hand still on the beast's neck. "You know this doesn't end here." Cale nodded, stepping close, his hand briefly squeezing Eric's shoulder. "No. But it begins here. And that's enough." The predator lowered itself back to the ground, curling once again at Eric's side. Not as a beast chained by conquest but as a guardian by choice. Its golden eyes flicked between the two men, then closed in quiet repose as though declaring to the galaxy itself, the bond was real and it would not be broken. The night settled into stillness. But far above, hidden among the stars, the council already stirred. The first whispers of rebellion had begun, carried not by armies or decrees, but by the sight of a predator asleep beside a man. And somewhere deep in the silence, Cale almost laughed at the irony. The deadliest creature in the galaxy had just given humanity its sharpest weapon, hope.